Welcome back to the Double A podcast. And with me today is a fellow iGEMer and one of the team captains of the team, Laiba. Laiba, do you want to give a quick introduction about who you are?
Sure. Hi, my name is Laiba Ahmed. I'm a rising junior at Stony Brook University. I study biology and psychology. And I know Adit through, like he said, a research program that we're doing together over the summer. So yeah, thank you for having me here today.
No, thank you for coming on. It's a pleasure to have one of the team captains and just a really, I'd say you're an energetic person for the most part. So I'm sure this episode's going to be great. Maybe we can start by talking real quick about how, since you mentioned that you're on the iGEM team, maybe we could start off by talking about how you started getting involved on the iGEM team in terms of joining, applying, and ultimately becoming a team captain, and what led you to that. So maybe if you want to start from the beginning as to where you got the idea of joining the iGEM team.
Okay, yeah, sure. So it's actually very funny because I saw like an iGEM flyer in the humanities building after my creative writing class, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." I'm not really. I didn't really know what synthetic biology was, but I was like, "Oh, maybe I can go to a few info sessions and figure it out." And then I missed both of the. I think there were three. I missed all three of the info sessions, and I was like, "Oh, this is really bad." But I got an email from the psych department. Saying like, hey, if you guys are interested, you can do this, research program. You don't really need to be a biochemistry major to apply, and it's going to be really fun. And I was like, okay, sure, why not just apply? So that's how I found it.
I don't remember there being any info sessions in the flyer that I saw. I just saw apply with this like QR code and bam. So I didn't know there were info sessions. I would have gone if there were.
Yeah, I missed them. But it's okay. We made it.
Mm-hmm. So maybe we can also talk a bit about that initial, I guess, like the reading course that we had to do in the spring, because we've discussed a bit that there were like some difficulties, and I talked about it with Avi a bit in the last episode, where there is like some initial struggles in terms of just figuring out like how to find your place in the team when it comes to like learning all the terminology and getting, I guess, a sense of how to go about the research process. So maybe if you want to detail some like initial struggles you had at the beginning.
Yeah, sure. So at first, I heard everybody's like, when they were giving their introductions, I heard, I'm a biochemistry major, I'm a chemical engineering major. And I was like, wow, these are very hardcore like studies. I don't think I'm like, smart enough for this. Mm-hmm. And then when we would go over, a couple of bio topics, like, of course, I have taken bio classes before, but for some reason, I just wouldn't, raise my hand. I was just afraid, like, people would think I'm stupid. Like, what if I say the wrong thing? So at first, it was, like, scary. Also because, like, I didn't really know anyone on the team before. So it was just, like, me alone in the room. But over time, getting to know everybody and, doing activities with them really helped out, because I slowly got the sense like, hey, I actually belong here and people like me. So that was good.
I think something that was really helpful, at least for me, and I feel like everyone on the team, was just the kind of culture that we created. I would say even like from the first class, because it became really easy to just talk to you guys like from the get-go. I feel like there was that initial like, awkward phase but that lasted for like less than half of the class, because pretty soon after that, we were just like chatting it up. And I think an important part about working together in a research group, at least with undergraduate students, where we're all figuring it out as we go, is we have to kind of like working with each other to succeed. And I know that isn't the case for like every single workplace, but at least in the situation that iGEM presents, where you have undergraduate students who, more likely than not, it's like one of their first research experiences, or one of their first or their first, then it really is important for everyone to like get along and have good team dynamics. And I think that's something that we've done a really good job of developing during the summer and during the spring reading course as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Establishing a positive group dynamic is always important. And I feel like we were able to do that pretty quickly. even just talking amongst people, I realized that, oh, I've taken, some of the classes that you guys are taking, or I'm in some of the same classes you guys are taking. And that like was really nice. Like we were all here for a common goal and we were all new, but we figured it out. So that was really good.
I think something that at least resonated with me was, at least for me personally, and perhaps like Chu and Abhishek to an extent, since they're not necessarily directly biology or biology related majors, coming from a computer science major standpoint. The reason I joined was mainly just to see what, I guess, like research experience the biology realm could offer me, and where I could like integrate coding or programming into it. And that was a bit scary at first because really the only experience I had in terms of biology, at least at collegiate level, was AP biology, which is like, an introductory bio class at best when it comes to like translating to biology level research at the university. And I think that kind of knowledge still does hold merit, but it was a bit scary seeing like on the first day when we were going across the room, biology major, biochemistry major, chemical engineering major. I was like, wait, hold up. All these people are from like biology backgrounds. But I was a bit concerned that there'd be like, I could very easily get lost in translation. And you can, but I think that the environment that we had set up where people were willing to like meet up outside of their schedules, just to like give you a refresher on like what your group's proposal was in terms of like its development and the stage it was at. I think that was really good in terms of keeping people up to date on how the project develops.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I really like how iGEM is not just, research, but it's also like a bunch of like outreach and, modeling as well. So it's not, you don't just have to be a biology major to do well or even participate. It's actually like the uniqueness of your like studies is what actually adds more to the team as a whole. So that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, like those kind of different subteams really allow you to diversify your, I guess, what you get out of the experience of being on the team. Like I'm sure, at least for you, you've done some outreach or you've helped out with the outreach team bits. So that's definitely broadened your appreciation for what that kind of work entails and also deepened your skill set in terms of what you can do in the future, whether it be like reaching out, maybe if you're doing in a research position, reaching out to people about like educating like a high school or doing grant related stuff, which the team has done amazingly, which is kind of crazy to think that we've applied for a grant as a group of undergraduate students, but it's really what the power of teamwork is capable of achieving, I think.
Yeah, sure, for sure. I know I'm not a very, like outspoken, extroverted person, but after participating in, outreach stuff, I kind of learned that, hey, I can actually do this. I can actually, stand in front or like sit in front of, a wide audience and talk to them about, a project that I've been working really hard on. And it's really good.
So as we mentioned earlier, you are a team leader of the team. So what led you to pursue that position, out of curiosity? Because obviously it entails a lot of work in terms of like managing personalities and making sure things are organized on the team. Because I feel that it's very easy for things to get like discombobulated and very chaotic when you have like a group of kids who haven't even graduated college working in like one place per se.
Yeah, it's actually really funny because when we were trying to figure out who would be a team leader and who wouldn't, I didn't really even want to be a team leader. I didn't like nominate myself or even vote for myself. So finding out that I was one of the team leaders was a bit surprising, but kind of like really, I don't know, it made me really happy too to know that, sure, these people don't really know me for a really long time. They've only known me for like, 2 or 3 months, but they still think that I would be a good fit for a team leader. So it was actually like pretty nice, but scary as well. Especially establishing, what's in order. And, although like we're not really a hierarchical kind of team, people still like go to the team leaders sometimes when there's like a problem or when there's like advice. So it's, there's like a little bit of extra work, but in the end of the day, the only difference between, being a team leader and someone from the rest of the team is just an extra meeting with our advisor every once a week.
Yes.
So So
So was this like the first formal leadership position that you've had in terms of like a research group or an extracurricular club, or is this like nothing new to you in terms of like heading a group?
college-wise, I've never been in any other leadership position. In high school, it was kind of like a thing for me because, it's like, oh, look good for your college resume, and it'll look good for, applying. I did do a bunch of like, presidential and like vice president roles, I guess, in honor societies. And I was like captain of science Olympiad in my high school, but that was mainly because I was one of the, older people there on the team. And the same thing goes for being captain of badminton and tennis. And it was just because I was the older than everyone else there. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So like your, in terms of like being a team leader, how have, so I guess some background, everything we're doing for the iGEM team is virtual. So essentially all the research that we're doing, we're just going across the web and getting random papers. We're not able to do like in-person stuff in a laboratory, unfortunately, due to COVID, but we're still researching our project to develop like mathematical models for it, as well as show that like scientifically it's feasible. So in terms of that kind of virtual lab work research experience, how have you and AJ, the other team lead, been working to engage members of the team like in from a virtual, I guess, workspace?
So that's just meetings, meetings, and meetings. We have a bunch of meetings laid out every week, and they usually hold they're all usually mostly held around the same times every week, especially those for like the sub teams. So that's how we've been working to organize the meetings. But as always, those meetings as they're from like through Zoom. The other ones who usually hold, probably the more spontaneous ones, are through Discord actually. And those are especially nice because it's just, oh, hey, I'm working on this and feel free to help out if you want. And anybody can, hop in the chat whenever and help out. So I'm really glad we're doing research at a time like this where we do have Zoom and Discord and other applications like that we're able to collaborate virtually. Ideally, it would be nice to have everyone, in the same room. I would have been a bit better for team dynamics anyways, just working together, seeing each other every single day. But we're just trying to make the best out of what we have.
So at least in terms of you, like, have you faced any challenges in terms of like working virtually? Like, have there been times where you just catch yourself either, going off track in terms of like productivity, or maybe that was something that you realized like really quickly off the bat and established, I guess, a guideline for you to stay on track throughout the rest of the summer. So maybe you could detail how you've adjusted to working virtually, because it's definitely not an easy transition.
Oh yeah, for sure. Staring at a computer screen for about 5 hours is not ideal, but some of the things that I usually find myself that help a lot is working with other members. I know it is a bit difficult finding, times where everybody is available, but I guess that's where the pandemic kind of helps because people don't really have other things that they're working on besides, summer classes. But yeah, I would say the biggest struggle would just be to finding times that everybody's down to working like on a specific part of the project, and then just not like getting distracted even if we're staring at a screen, for a long period of time, because it's not something we're really used to. And a big selling point of iGEM was, wet lab work, which is one of the reasons why I did apply. But as always, we just have to, adapt to what the changes come.
No, that's a great point. I think, at least for me personally, initially, like, those group meetings and group work were really helpful in terms of like making sure I was staying engaged. I will not lie, it was kind of easy to like thrown off during the weekly team meetings, but I realized at a certain point, like, if I'm attending these, I might as well get something out of it. So that kind of, I felt, was the shift around like, I'd say week 3 or so. Maybe, week 3. I'm not gonna say week 2, but around like week 3, I kind of realized I need to start getting more out of this and not necessarily just getting by with like the minimum per se. So I think that was really good of me to like recognize that. And I know a lot of people on the team have also recognized that and been putting in like a crazy amount of hours virtually.
Yeah, very true. And it also goes down to if you're not working with a group, then you're not getting work done. You're not really going to have fun, which is like kind of, one of the reasons you do research with other people anyways, just to have fun, getting your ideas across. And I do understand that meetings can get, kind of boring at times because of all the recaps and all the work we have to do. But I really appreciate people, stepping up, participating in the meetings, asking questions, making suggestions, because that has really helped in terms of organization. Even with something as small as like, hey, we should have different channels on Discord for outreach or web development. I feel like that helps a lot. And I'm glad that I'm able to, take the time to listen to everybody, because more often than not, they have way better ideas than I could ever come up with. So yeah. Great.
So I'm going to play job interviewer real quick here. If you were to say that there is, and I know the experience isn't over yet because we still have till I think October 15th or around that timeline to like submit everything for our project. But if you were to say so far, one skill or I guess quality that you've either learned or improved upon from iGEM, what would you say that is?
So this may sound a bit cringy, but just like, believing in myself. I know, like I mentioned upon it before, just how initially joining iGEM was a bit afraid because I thought everybody was, smarter than me, more qualified to be in this research position. But over time, I realized that people don't really like judge you for those reasons. It's just more so like if you are willing to put in the time and effort and just trying to improve the project or throughout time, that should be good enough. You don't have to be, the smartest person in the team. You have other like amazing qualities that, can go into the project just as much as, your intelligence would, So I feel like realizing that intelligence isn't everything was a big part, because I know a lot of people do, when they hear of a research position, they're like, oh, you're probably really smart, but it doesn't have to be the only thing that you're good at. You probably have way more other talents that you can bring to the table and, improve the project as a whole. So that was probably.
Would that be from like an organizational standpoint or just in your case, like a leadership standpoint, being able to lead people to a specific goal and start establishing deadlines and timelines? I think that really goes a long way and definitely is able to like contribute to what someone is able to put into the team in terms of like their mark and how they improve like the group dynamic. So yeah, intelligence definitely isn't everything. And I guess to anyone listening who might be in the fringe of like chasing for that research position, don't hesitate. If you want to, definitely go for it, because no one knows everything from the start, because everyone has to start from square one. It's a matter of how much time you're willing to put into what you want to pursue. So definitely like recommend going for research positions. And I guess if you're not into it, then I wouldn't say like just stop, but I guess try to keep in mind that you should try to go for what you want to do or are interested in doing, because ultimately if you do something that like someone else tells you to do but you're kind of half-assing it, then that only like takes away from what you're gaining in terms of like life skills and research experience.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. Passion is a big thing. If you're not passionate about something, you're likely not going to do well in it. But if you are passionate about something, no matter how difficult it may seem, you will be able to do it, because at the end of the day, that's your goal. You have a set goal and you have the grit to do it. And like, you might not think about it, but you have a lot of peers and, just people around you, whether it be, your family or your friends, or even, other research members, if you do research, that are willing to help you along the way. This isn't like a competition. It may seem like it, like you're competing against one another for like, the best resume or like positioning in a grad school or medical school. But at the end of the day, people are really there to help you. And you shouldn't be afraid to, reach out and just be like, hey, I don't really understand this. Please go over it. Or I need help with this. Please go over it. Help me out.
I think grit was a word you mentioned. And I think that definitely is like a good way to kind of summarize how people should approach like a research position. just being like gritty and willing to like put the time in and put effort in, working smarter and harder. So yeah, definitely agree with everything you said there.
Yeah, for sure. Starting off, I wasn't really, encroached in, plant biology. I'm more of like a neurology, neurosurgery type of thing. And I found it a bit difficult in the beginning, understanding, plant concepts and, just stuff that I would have never have found interest in. But I was passionate about the team. I was passionate about, competing against, amazing, intelligent other schools that are able to come up with like the best projects that I couldn't even think of. And, I'm just glad that I'm working with people who are more supportive than, condescending at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Teamwork makes the dream work, as the corny saying goes.
For sure.
So awkward transition, but I guess in terms of like working virtually, that obviously means there's more time to do stuff. One of those things being catching up on your favorite TV series. So we were thinking we would discuss that during this episode really quickly. So Laiba, you mentioned that, so you're watching Grey's Anatomy, The Good Place, and Lennox Hill. So maybe you could go through each of those three series and maybe detail like what you like about each of them.
Yeah, of course. So Grey's Anatomy, very popular medical TV show. They do kind of not really focus more so on the medical parts. It's a lot of drama, but I personally really like it. I believe they're thinking about launching like their 16th season. So it's been going on for a while. One of the biggest things, I mentioned neuro a while ago, I really want to be like a neurosurgeon when I grow up. So seeing that there is a female neurosurgeon, as corny it might sound, seeing that there is a female neurosurgeon in the show kind of makes me really happy because I'm like, oh, I can do that. Like I'm like, that's me, essentially.
No, that representation, it goes a long way, I feel. And I think shows have really come a long way in terms of like recognizing that it doesn't make sense to just have like white mainstream actors as the only people in like a TV series, regardless of like what our like society's perception of what actors should be is. It's important to get that kind of I guess representation in a show. So that's really awesome to hear. Isn't Ice Cube in that series, if I'm not mistaken?
Really? Oh, I didn't know
It's
that.
either Grey's Anatomy or something else, but it's like one of those like it's. I know he's in one TV series, like a medical one, but I don't know. I forget what the name is, but I think it's Grey's Anatomy.
That's so funny. I didn't see him yet, but if I do, I'll let you know. That's
Okay.
really funny.
So for The Good Place, I think I've watched the pilot episode with my friends, but I never was able to watch any of the other episodes. So correct me if I'm wrong, but the basic concept is this woman goes to heaven, even though she wasn't like the best person in the world when she was on planet Earth. And that's really all I know in terms of like the concept of the show. I know there's like a hell in that series, but I'm not sure like what kind of symbolic nature it has in terms of like and the role it has in the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so spoilers for those listening if you guys want to watch The Good Place. But I first watched it just because I knew my friends were watching it and they kind of recommended it to me saying that, oh, it's really funny, you should watch it. It's a good show. And I was like, okay, sure. I didn't really have any more shows to watch besides, Grey's Anatomy. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll watch it. I don't really watch comedic shows, but I watched it anyways. And after I finished it on Instagram, I saw that it actually is it was derived from like an inspiration from a philosophical play called No Exit by Jean-Paul Sartre. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Let me read more about it. And the basic idea of that philosophical play was that hell is not really like a fiery place that, physically tortures people. It's more the bad experiences that you have with people around you due to your clashing personalities. And the more I like read into that, the more I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, because the main character, Eleanor, she's like this type of person. She's kind of like a slob. She doesn't want to be judged by people, and she's kind of like very egotistical in a sense. And her neighbor is a person who was like in their life was very philanthropic, rich, a socialite, completely opposite to what Eleanor was. So again, spoiler alert, Eleanor figures out that she's not really in heaven, she's in hell, because not she was being tortured not by the environmental surrounding, but rather the people that she was making, interacting with, basically. And it's really cool how people like producers and actors are able to kind of use their platform to not just be, like a comedic show, to not make it like a comedic show, but moreover like cover social or like philosophical issues as well.
No, yeah, that definitely, like, I think that really marks like a good show from a great show from a good show, if that makes sense. Not to knock those that don't do it because they might not feel comfortable doing so, but you really do have to just give a hand to those shows that really do address those like psychological or societal issues that we don't really address that well in modern society or in other aspects of society. So the last show that you mentioned was Lennox. So this I've never heard of. So maybe you'd be willing to like go into detail about this a bit more.
So Lennox Hill is actually like a documentary. It basically covers how workers in the health field kind of try to establish like a work-life balance. So they follow around actual doctors and, show how this is, yeah, they're a health worker, but, at the end of the day, they're also like a real person, with their own life. And I really like how it covers that, because Lennox Hill is an actual hospital in New York City. And the fact that the doctors who are in the show were able to, take the time to show people like, hey, we are, real humans and we have feelings and we get stressed, and we should, and it's like a serious problem, because I know with medical school students and even some doctors, there's a very, very high rates of burnout. And to kind of like show the perspective, following around doctors and show like what they go through in a day-to-day basis is really neat for me. I really like it. They also have a summer webinar series called Brain Turns, in which they cover like live surgeries as well, and teach about anatomy. And I'm really drawn to that, again, because I am a pre-medical student. So it's neat.
Yeah, I think it's really important to just address like how to establish a healthy, like how to have a healthy work experience while also managing the things that you have in your personal life. Because at the end of the day, like you have to come first in terms of like your ability to come to work prepared. And if you're not like addressing those, or if the system that you're working in isn't really set up to help you address those, then that's kind of an issue from the start. So I think that it's really good for Lennox Hill to be addressing that in terms of like an issue that needs to be tackled, and bringing more transparency to what the issue is in terms of like what the real facts are, as opposed to like what our perceptions may be. Because a lot of times like the narrative that might be made by like either the mainstream media or the people you live with can very possibly be different from what it actually is,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And especially with the pandemic going on, doctors have to work even harder. And it's really important that people appreciate the fact that, they're literally on the front lines working, while people, might not feel the need to wear a mask or not feel the need to socially distance. And it's really important. I just feel like it's very important that also the society itself listens to those who, went to school for these types of things. And because then it goes back to some people who might not be really, who might not really know about the value of education, or might be like, oh, college is, not necessary. Their ideas will probably be reinforced because, people who are doctors are not being listened to by the general public. So yeah, it's really important to get, a healthcare person's perspective on everything as well,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So those are your three shows, and at least for me, there've been two main ones I've been catching up on. Or so the thing with me is that whenever I catch up on a TV series, it's someone else in the house catching up for me, and I just happen to be in the room while they're watching it, because I really can't recall a time when I've taken the initiative to like sit down and watch through like a TV series or at least on my own accord, but rather it's just like either my brother playing The Office or my parents playing Seinfeld. So I wouldn't say it's catching up. It's just more so getting hooked into getting catch up. The first one during quarantine that I started catching up on was The Office. Obviously, a lot of good comedy. I kind of forgot how good of a chemistry that John Krasinski and Rainn Wilson had in terms of like the Jim Dwight relationship, because they really just like hit it off in terms of, I'd really say from the start of like the healthcare episode, in terms of like Dwight slashing the benefits and Jim just like trying to pull pranks on him to anger him intentionally. So that part of the TV series was just like really hilarious and astonishing in terms of like how well they were able to work together. And obviously Steve Carell, like he makes the series amazing in terms of like the humor he brings. I feel like a lot of the stuff he says would warrant like a good amount of cancel culture hatred, or not hate, cancel culture tweets towards him like nowadays. But like I think obviously TV shows have learned from like to refrain from that kind of humor. But when the good jokes hit, the good jokes hit, I'd say. And then just like the rest of the cast is really well constructed in terms of like balancing personalities and whatnot. I was kind of sad to see like how things just started going down the hill after like Steve Carell left in terms of just the quality of episodes. But I mean, they got a lot, like 7 really good seasons out, so that's more than worth it in terms of like my enjoyment personally.
Yeah, I really like that show. My brother actually started watching that show, so I have a bit similar experience that you did. And at first I was like, okay, because I'm not really for comedy, but I was like, okay, I'll just sit down and watch it as well. But I found it very enjoyable. I really like the fire drill episode. That is one of my favorites, and it's a classic too. But I do understand how some of the stuff that was covered by Steve Carell's character might have been, kind of canceled. And again, like you said, it's really important that people learn from it rather than, just dismissing it at the end. It's like, that's like probably the best things, realizing that you did something wrong and then apologizing or, working to like stop that, negative.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the second series that I've been watching or hooked into watching a lot more is Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So this was something that I actually had watched a good amount of, like I want to say 2-3 years ago, but it kind of tapered off in terms of like my investment into watching the show. But like once again, my brother, because he started watching it on the TV, I kind of naturally got drawn in because it's just such a good series, man. I think the fact that it went from 1990 to 96 is kind of impressive just in terms of its longevity. And if I'm not mistaken, this was like the beginning of like Will Smith's acting career. And I mean, even from then, like he was just so good at filling the role that he had in terms of like the comedic value that he brought, and not just comedy, but also like the thing about that show is that it did a really good job of tackling a lot of like racial issues, from police discrimination, and I think even the first season, to like the role of education in tackling injustice on the racial level, to like the responsibilities people have as a father. I know like one of the most iconic scenes is when Will's father, or one of the most iconic episodes, is when Will's father comes back to see him because for a majority of his childhood in that show, the father wasn't there for Will, and ultimately Will's father decides to leave because he's not ready to make that, I guess, commitment in terms of like being a proper parent. But Will, in that time frame where his father is back, kind of bonds to him and is ready to accept him back as a father figure. But when Will's father leaves, there's the whole scene where he essentially like breaks down into tears after declaring how he doesn't need his father because he can be his own man and a better person than his father will ever be. And that just ultimately just like shows how far Will Smith as an actor was able to develop in terms of like showing those emotions, and just really is a testament to how well the show was able to address issues that plague like Black communities and communities of color, unfortunately.
Yeah, I didn't really watch the show in its entirety, but I do know about that scene. And I think that it's very important that celebrities do, and like producers actually, do use their platform to tackle these issues, because the fact that this show was popular kind of shows that although these aren't, these are very unfortunate conditions that people have to grow up with, it's others can actually, unfortunately, well, like relate to these, or they understand the struggles growing up, in one of these types of, neighborhoods or families. And again, it's very important that celebrities use, whatever the platform is, to kind of show that, oh, there's other injustices that are, present in society that everyone should, work to, quelch or whatever. And that goes for, whether it's a TV show or whether it's just that you are, a CEO of some company, or you're just, a different, like a singer, a rapper, or anything. I think is very important, because the amount of following these celebrities have is greater than anyone else, essentially. And for them having to, especially those celebrities of color, if they dismiss these injustices or issues, then the general public is not going to take the time to learn about them anyways. So I think that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the fact that Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was doing it in the 90s, even before it started becoming a bit more widespread in terms of people, celebrities of color addressing these issues in their everyday lives. It's really a testament to how progressive the show was in terms of making sure to bring these issues to light. I think the most recent episode I watched was an episode where essentially you have Will Smith, who in the show is a really good basketball player for his school, going up against another school with a really good basketball player, but that competitor that he's going up against has a son and has to work multiple jobs to provide for him. So ultimately at the end of that episode, Will Smith is a bit jealous because he allowed that. So ultimately at the end of the episode, spoiler alert, Will essentially allowed the other guy to get the game-winning basket when there was a scout at the game, so that he was set up for success in terms of getting a better scholarship for college and whatnot. But ultimately, Will kind of had the perception that he was just in it to go pro. But at the end of the episode, the guy's no, I'm doing this there is the chance of going pro, but that's just astronomically slim in terms of actually getting onto an NBA team. Ultimately, a scholarship is going to give me a free education, which allows me to invest in my family with my mind and knowledge, not necessarily just from my athletics and something which is more prone to being disrupted by an injury or something. So just to show the importance of tackling, and I think it's only part of the equation, but in terms of tackling the wealth gap in terms of between white individuals and people of color, and how to go about it. And there's definitely more to it, or more to that issue that the show addresses, but that was just one that resonated with me. And another episode was where Will's aunt and Viv's iconic person in the show just addresses the importance of education in terms of learning about racial injustices as opposed to simply following mainstream figures like Malcolm X, not to dismiss what they do, but just to make sure you understand the whole scope. And that really pertains to what we're dealing with right now in terms of people of color more than ever advocating for people to read up on issues instead of trusting everything that someone might say on a TV screen or during a news segment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really agree. And I feel this is where the good of social media comes about, because a lot of the things that I have learned about several injustices that I was never aware of were through social media, because people were just sharing, stories of these are all the people that were, sacrificed based on what is the movement going on right now, and how some stuff that isn't really covered by the media is being covered by social media, because obviously the media, they want to, show news wise, they want to show, news stories. They don't want to, keep on telling people about the same thing, but that doesn't really mean that it's not happening, especially with the protests going on right now.
Yeah, no, I think it's crazy how there's just been very little reporting right now in terms of protests, whereas 3-4 weeks ago, it was covering the news, and that just shows the importance that, or the important role that social media has played in terms of keeping people aware about these issues, and the importance of making sure you're not just tuning into like the CNN, the big hitters like CNN, Fox News, for whoever goes to that. I don't personally, not a shot against them, just my personal preference, and like MSNBC, but like your local stations like ABC that might be covering like the riots in Philadelphia for me living like an hour away, or the riots that are going on in New York City for you since you live on Long Island. So.
Yeah, definitely. And we can't do anything to change that, but educate people, starting young, because we're probably just going to be the next generation of voters, and we can probably try to make the changes necessary.
I think education goes a really long way.
Yeah.
So the importance of it cannot be understated in terms of just making us as a society more informed and more, I would say, just. I'm not sure if that's the right word in terms of like judging things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At the end of it all, everyone needs to be educated on these topics, to not like actively try to understand the problems in society is almost as bad as dismissing them outright. So very important.
We'll be right back with the second segment of this episode. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the AA podcast with Laiba. So right now we're going to talk about how things have changed in the manner of a year, how quickly and how drastically things changed. So what was the summer of 2019 like for us, and how has it changed for this summer? So Laiba, maybe you can go into detail about what your summer plans were or are at the moment, and what they were last year.
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually getting snap memories now because I took so many pictures. But in the summer of 2019, so last year, my family and I went to the UAE, specifically went to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And it was actually very fun because it was our, first time there. And we do usually travel to Pakistan, but we wanted to, switch it up a bit for summer 2019 before I started, research and everything. So that was really fun. I was able to go to Ferrari World, which is like a theme park based on, Ferraris, as the name suggests. I was able to visit tons of beaches with, they had such clear water, and you would actually you would stand in the water and little fishies would just hit your legs, and it was so cute. But that was really fun. It was extremely hot. The sand would burn the bottom of my feet essentially. But it was so worth it because everything was gorgeous.
I think that makes the water more enjoyable, just in terms of going from burning to cool.
Exactly. Yeah, it was so soothing. We also visited the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building. Just interesting to see the diversity in the workforce, the amount of time and effort and money that took into making such an amazing, building, and just learning the history about how everything came to be. I find that stuff extremely interesting. So that was a lot of, Dubai. We also went quad biking in the dunes. That was my first time. And I was so scared because I've never done anything like that before. But I was, very excited because I usually find those things, really intriguing. So I wanted to try it out. Scary stuff, but it was really fun. So that was, and then just coming back on the island and everything was just, hanging out with friends, talking about how college is, because that was the end of my freshman year. So just knowing everyone, well, actually, yeah, then about the end of my freshman year. So, just talking to everybody, seeing how their college is going, because not all of my friends are also at Stony Brook. So it was interesting to see how things changed with the different college. So that was me in 2019. Yeah.
So in terms of I'm very curious. So in terms of the Ferrari theme park, what do they have do they have any rides with just Ferraris going around a merry-go-wheel or something like that?
That's so fun. Yeah, it's actually an indoor theme park.
Okay.
So it's really cool. Like the roller coasters obviously do go, outside and then come back in. And so it's a lot of roller coasters. There's VR simulations. You can it's just like a prototype of a car that you can sit in. Wear like the VR headset, and it like you almost can visualize like you're a racer and it sounds kind of corny, but it was very fun. There's tons of simulations. That was really fun. Another thing that is a bit more of on the expensive side, you can actually drive a Ferrari or like sit like in the passenger seat, and like see how fast they're able to go. Again, I really like the history of everything. So they were teaching about the history and how Enzo Ferrari, started like his idea and brought it to what it is today. So it was very fun. Expensive, but very fun.
My only VR car experience was at this fun, I'm going to say, car show in Philadelphia once. It was supposed to be some activity for, like, essentially against distracted driving. And within the first 5 seconds, I'm pretty sure I went down a one-way street and crashed into a car. So it kind of scared me off from any VR car experiences, and scared me off from getting my permit for a bit.
That was one of like the most fun I've ever had. Because I've never done VR until like that summer. So it was a scary experience, but it was very fun. Yeah.
So how does that differ for you in terms of like the summer of 2020 and what you're doing?
Yeah, so obviously no traveling. So you probably heard this phrase like a lot of times, but finding your new normal. So I tried to, besides like iGEM work, I tried to learn new things, which is not like the best thing for me because I'm the type of person. This is a very bad trait of mine, but if I can't learn the thing for like within the first few minutes or like the first few tries, I just quit and like never come back to it. But the thing with skateboarding, it's always like that's one of the things I want to learn. And I just see like videos on Instagram of like girls skateboarding, doing tricks, and I really really find interest in that, and I try. I'm really bad at it, but I try. I can ollie. I don't go that high, but I can
And
try.
always an ollie, so like, you can't
Exactly.
deny that's progress.
Exactly. That's what, yeah. My brother laughs at me for wanting to learn how to skateboard, but it's okay. I also, so I'm 5'3", very small. And my skateboard, like for my height is like 2 sizes too big. So that's probably why I can't learn it correctly, but I just don't want to buy another skateboard if I already have one. So, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of like skateboarding, I think I have a penny board that I use to go around campus all the time during the spring semester and for a bit of the fall semester as well. But that was pretty much like the extent of my pennyboarding knowledge, just like riding around and going fast. I'm not really more of a tricks guy just because it's kind of hard to do that on a pennyboard in the first place. And most of the time I was carrying a backpack around with me with my notes in it. So doing a trick has very high crash potential. So I would see all the people at Eastside Dining doing tricks, like on that little
Yeah.
like the pavement on the left, but I would just be like, nah, I'll just ride.
Yeah, no, I can. That's why I'm scared to like ride the skateboard around campus because I am gonna fall. Like that's no doubt. Like I'm gonna fall. It's gonna go somewhere else. Like
You just
it's
have to be careful with it at first, I feel.
true. Yeah, just like maneuvering it. Making sure it doesn't hit anybody because people don't move
Yeah.
sometimes. So
Sometimes you just have to go around them, and sometimes they just move randomly, like not even like going to a different side of the road, but just like going left for no reason when you're trying to go to the left. So it's definitely a bit of an adjustment, but ultimately, I think people can do it in terms of like skateboarding around campus.
yeah, definitely. Another thing I tried to learn is my brother is like an avid basketball fan. His favorite player is probably Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm sorry if I pronounced
Right?
that name wrong. Um, but oh god, but like, so he plays a lot of basketball, and he's like, like play with me, Laiba, because I want to practice my dunking and everything. So I was like, teach me how to do it. I'm short, but like lower the hoop, and maybe I can do it. So
Hmm.
I learned how to do that. There was was a bit difficult, and I was initially scared of like the ball hitting me because it had hit me like a bunch of times before. But I learned that. I also learned how to spin it on my finger, and that actually took me 5 minutes. I'm so proud of myself because it didn't take me long to learn it at all. So yeah, I'm so talented.
That's good. Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah.
So won't be mispronouncing it anymore, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And I hate, it's so funny because I hate when people mispronounce my name, but I'm so bad with names myself, so can't even be angry at anyone.
Yeah, with me, for names at least, when people mispronounce my name, I feel like that most of the times I just let it fly, at least the first time around, unless they ask, like, make sure I'm pronouncing it right. So with the, so like I mentioned during last week's weekly meeting, I started an internship with this other professor at Stony Brook, and essentially I'd worked with them during the spring semester on like this website application, and for the entire semester he was like mispronouncing my name, but I was like, I mean, like, whatever, because I was shy to just like jump in and be like, it's not a D, it's odd.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think at the start of July, he, like, during a meeting we had where we were discussing our progress on the project we're working on, he just like at the beginning, right as I joined the Zoom call, he was like, so Adit, it's pronounced Adit, right? And I was like, yeah, it's pronounced like that. And it was like, you got to tell me when I'm mispronouncing it. So from here on out, I am being straightforward with people about how my name is pronounced, taking no exceptions to that.
Yeah, same. In like high school, people used to mispronounce, like teachers. Every like new year would be another problem because I would just know they would hesitate on the attendance list, and I would just know because my name is usually one of like the first ones, anyways, because of my last name. But I would just know that they're about to mispronounce my name, so I would just be like, "Oh yeah, I'm Laiba. I'm right here." But yeah, can't really blame them because it's spelled a bit weird, but we should, like, as again, like people of color, we should be more firm about that kind of stuff anyways.
Yeah, I think like just making that culturally aware in terms of just like helping people understand how pronunciations go, and not just like being okay with going, well, I wouldn't say being okay, but like not making it a norm to just like for mispronunciations to be like, oh, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So at least for me, in terms of like how summers have been different, last summer I went to India for like 3 weeks, I believe, and it was like the first time I'd been to India, I want to say in 4 years or so. So it'd been some time, been a hot sec, but it was really nice to just like meet my grandparents again, and just spend some quality time with them. And in addition to like just meeting my grandparents, we also took that trip to visit a lot of cities that we hadn't gone to. So the main two cities that we went to were Chennai and Pune, because that was where my grandparents lived or live, present tense. But we took the trip to just like go to other parts of India that we really just hadn't had the time to, or kind of looked over. So you're not Bangalore. I shouldn't be forgetting, but like the Taj Mahal being the biggest one. That was my first time going there. New Delhi was a really, really nice city. The food was amazing. The thing I remember most from that city was we just got some like straight off the street gulab jamun to eat, and that was so good. I'm usually like anti-Indian sweet because they're just like the texture and the taste is really weird for me, but that just hit the spot in a really different way. Maybe I should just blame the fact that I've been eating like American candy and like fried goes together, but it tasted really good. And then we also were able to visit the village that my grandfather on my dad's side was raised in. And that was really interesting, just in terms of like seeing what that kind of environment was like. Because for the most part, the closest thing, and it's not even close in terms of like the ruralness, but it was just like my hometown of like Athens, Georgia, which is just this like rural city about an hour and a half or an hour out of Atlanta. But I guess the thing with like the village that we went to, where my I think it's called Bangpalayam, or mom and dad. If I'm mispronouncing it, then or if I'm not getting it right, then I'm sorry. But it was just really cool to see. Like we were essentially living on a farm per se, where you would just like see chickens when you were going to the bathroom outside the window, and that was really cool, just in terms of like seeing what the culture was like there and like how the environment's just a bit different from like city life or suburban life. So that was just really eye opening in terms of like recognizing that there's this whole different world and or worlds out there for you to explore. And it just makes you more interested in like traveling to those places more often.
Yeah, for sure. I know you touched upon like how it being so different than, you know, where we live now. It's actually very funny. My relatives in Pakistan, they have goats and, you know, like cows. And, you know, here, if you had a goat in your backyard, that would have been a bit weird. But there, it's just like normal. You know, they live in a gated community, but it's just, you know, a norm to have farm animals walking around. So it's very interesting. Yeah. And people kind of, you know, look at me in awe when I say like, oh yeah, I have a goat back home, you know, like I have a pet goat. It's very interesting towards them. But for me, it's not very like, you know, unique because it's just like a norm back home. So
I think the
that,
craziest thing was there was just we were going to I think it was a hotel in, let me see if I can find the city name, but we were going to a hotel in the middle of the night, and out of nowhere, like right as we were about 5 minutes out from the hotel, if I'm not mistaken, but right in the middle of a road, this like massive cow, just like we just are about to run into it, but the taxi driver Laura was able to like spot it, and he had to like get out of the car and just like shoot away for us to get to the hotel. So that was probably the funniest part of the trip, just in terms of like bizarreness and comedic value. But oh, so the city's Goa. I feel like I should know that. Or no, Goa's a state. I'll have to double check on the city. I'm not 100% sure, but it was a city in Goa, which is like Southwest India. It was a Portuguese state. It was owned by the Portuguese actually for a bit, but ultimately like India was able to claim it as part of the state country. And it's a really nice beach state. It was unfortunately raining for a good amount of the time when we went because monsoon season in India like pretty much was in full storm. But it was really we were able to get a good glimpse of like what the beach looked like in terms of what kind of stuff was surrounding it and just like the beauty of like the waves and the water there. So that was really cool. No one was like going in to swim because the waves were just too wild, but it was just nice to like watch.
mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes like, you know, the scene is just enough anyways. You don't really have to immerse yourself. But that's really good. Yeah. I feel like if I had more money, I would definitely travel to, you know, hundreds of different places that I have in mind. Probably Brazil being one of them. But yeah, you know, just like need time and money.
For Carnival.
You know what? Maybe that's actually a good idea. You know, like a friend like road trip to there or something.
I would have wanted to go for the World Cup because that year was just so good in terms of like the setting, the kind of matches there were. But yeah, Brazil is definitely like a place I want to go to as well, just in terms of like Rio de Janeiro being like the main tourist kind of city, but there's a bunch of other stuff they have in terms of like rainforests and just culturally rich cities there as well.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. I think the upcoming World Cup is in Qatar. I'm not sure though. I don't know if they.
And in terms of what's been happening this summer, iGEM's definitely been like a big part just in terms of getting the research experience, but also making friends with everyone on the team and actually getting my first job in terms of like working has been kind of crazy. Um, it's been weird, I'd say. Like there was a lot of HR stuff that I had to, so I can't say too much about, well, I'm actually not sure about how much I can say about it just because there are like some confidentiality agreements, but essentially we're working with like COVID data and trying to analyze it in different ways so people can like properly use it and the public can get more insight and information into like certain statistical trends with COVID. So it's been really cool working in that kind of like big data, those big data kind of like, I guess, things you'll do. And it's been really cool to learn the technologies that we've been using to analyze the data. So that's been like a really cool process. HR was a bit of a mess in terms of like getting onboarded, but when you're working with like medical data, I feel like everything is in terms of just like confidentiality agreements. So that's been really cool. And probably the most exciting part of the summer, and this isn't a knock on iGEM or my job, but like basketball coming back in Orlando. So I'm really excited for that. Usually the season ends in like early June, but the fact that we're able to still get it in late July going into, I think, like October, technically. That's going to be really cool in terms of just seeing how people like adapt to that kind of scenario, and hopefully everyone is able to stay safe in the Orlando bubble that they've set up. But it should be really cool to have basketball back because when the season ended, I was really bummed out. But now that's come back, I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Yeah.
And I've been also playing more basketball with my brother because he is only 3 years younger than me, but still really good at basketball. So we've been, playing one-on-one. I can't say I've been winning every time, but it's still been fun to like better my skills and just become a more well-rounded player. But also like I've started, now I wouldn't say analyzing film, but trying to learn more about how I can be more technically sound in terms of like how I play the game, which is just important in terms of like being able to like prevent injuries, being a big one, or just like making the right read at the right moment in time during like any point in a game. So that's been really cool. And my brother, who's a really big fan of video games, is kind of like with the TV shows that I've been watching, he's drawn me into that as well. So I haven't been playing nearly as much as he has, but it's still been kind of fun to play either 2K with him, or we actually got, funnily enough, this like really interesting cricket game. So it's been really cool just like to learn more about the sport because our dad is really into cricket and he's been like making sure that we've been watching cricket highlights from India World matches as of recently. But cricket, it's still a cool sport to, I guess, play video game wise. And I have a lot of friends at Stony Brook who like to play it as well in the recreation center. So ultimately, like video games has also been something that I've been engaging in more, say, if that's a way to talk about video games.
That's really cool. I'm not really like a big fan of video games because again, I'm really bad at them. But I think it was 2K19 or 2K20. I don't know. There was one. It was selling for like $5, and my brother and I bought it, and we were like, "Oh, we're gonna play basketball, like like on our Xbox." But I just spent more time, customizing my character than actually playing. So I really like that stuff. So yeah, that was like the extent of my video game knowledge, and also Minecraft. I just play on my Xbox, not really PC, but which is kind of bad, but it's okay.
Yeah, I think like Minecraft and Animal Crossing have been the two biggest like quarantine video games that people have been playing.
Yeah,
Like on
exactly.
my feed for Instagram and Snapchat, I've just been seeing Minecraft, a lot of Animal Crossing in terms of just like pop culture references.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too, me too.
So something I'm sure that like we've both been doing is listening to more music during quarantine and everything. So I think we both wanted to talk about that in terms of like which artists we listen to and maybe go into more detail about a specific genre and how it's been perceived by like society. So like at least for you, what are there any artists or genres that you're a big fan of?
Yeah, I almost exclusively listen to hip hop and rap. Like it's like if you look at my playlist, it's just hip hop and rap. It's kind of embarrassing, but that's fine. Um, in terms of artists, I would have to say Little Uzi Vert, Travis Scott, Denzel Curry, like basically any rapper that's popular right now. I'm really into like, underground rap as well. So that's where Denzel Curry comes in. And that's like my big three, I would have to say.
So how is underground rap different from like mainstream rap? Out of curiosity.
Yeah, so mainstream rap is probably what like a lot of people listen to, like, oh, I have so much money, I have these many cars. So that's usually like mainstream rap. And then underground rap is more like I would have to say kind of like the inner struggles of people, like what the rapper or artist goes through in their lives, how they came to be who they are today, any like probably societal problems that they've known or seen. Again, it goes back to using your platform to come up with or like highlight important injustices. So I really like that as well. And obviously it goes down to the beat, the flow, and that's always a plus.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying like what underground rap is. I personally haven't heard of that term until now. I'm glad the distinction has kind of been made in terms of like recognizing their differences and like what kind of hip hop songs are out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even know there was like that many genres of hip hop. I thought like, hip hop in itself is a genre. I didn't know there was so many subdivisions. But yeah, it's always good to find new music to listen to.
Mm-hmm. So for me personally, like I'm also a pretty big hip hop and rap fan, but like I'm also a fan of some of the classic songs as well. So like as of recently, for I'd say like a good amount of time in June, I was listening to Frank Sinatra, of all people, but that kind of like fizzled off in terms of like how my frequency of listening to him, and it just like started more time went to like listening to hip hop and rap. Thing about me is that I'm just the most I'm not trying to phrase it, but once I hear a good song, I'll just like relapse until like other people get annoyed, or like other people will point out to me, dude, you've been singing that song for like the fourth time this day. But I'll just be like, okay.
All right, yeah.
Which is like kind of weird on my part. But I mean, ultimately, I'm not sure how much I'll be able to change that, or it's just not something that I really want to actively change because I don't mind it. As long as I just don't annoy other people, I'm cool with that. But I guess for that reason, like my breadth of knowledge of rappers is kind of narrow in terms of like the names I know.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's mainly the like mainstream rappers. Denzel Curry was like a name I really hadn't heard of before, and maybe that's just the fact that like I'm kind of limited in terms of the songs that I listen to. But that's just like personally how I go. I do think it is like good to just branch out. So I have been like trying to make a conscious effort to do that. So whether that be like listening to the songs my brother plays a bit more, or just like trying to find something new. I think that's still a good practice to engage in, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Again, finding good music. If you're interested in Denzel Curry, actually, he's more of like, fast rapping, and like kind of angry rapping. I really like that type of music. So if you're into that, Denzel Curry should be, number one on your list.
I'd say like before I really got into rap, for the longest time, I was like a big pop fan, like a huge Adam Levine and like the typical like boy band kind of stuff fan. But that kind of tapered off once like rap started and hip hop started taking over in terms of like what people or like what mainstream culture started like listening to, I guess. But like those artists are still good, but I think just like in terms of the kind of like good songs in terms of just um, like beat the content that people talk about, because like with pop songs, I feel like a lot of them are like either it's a love story or it's kind of limited in terms of what you can talk about. Not to say that there aren't good pop songs that do touch upon like different topics from the norm, but I just feel like there's a bit more room, or there has been more room in like hip hop culture. And maybe that's just because it's a bit younger than like what you have with pop music, but I mean that's just a personal preference. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like it's been really interesting just exploring that facet of I guess music. And something you wanted to discuss was how like your music taste kind of impacts your personality. For me, I honestly have no idea, just because I'm not that good at psychoanalyzing myself. So I'm going to leave that to you.
Don't worry, I got you. I was just so I'm all you know, as I said mentioned before, I'm a psych major, so a lot of things do revolve around our personality. So I was just wondering one time, I listened to a lot of rap, so I was like, if you look at me, you wouldn't think I listen to rap music. You know, is there like a correlation between what your music taste is and your personality? Um, so I looked it up, read a few articles, and for hip hop, since we both commonly listen to that, mutually listen to that, it's actually shown that those who listen to hip hop and rap have more self esteem and are more outgoing. Which isn't true for me in terms of like the outgoing part. I don't know. You seem to be a pretty outgoing person.
I feel like you're pretty outgoing during like the team lead like the meetings and whatnot. So I would disagree with your assessment.
Okay, maybe the study is right then. Yeah. So it was just interesting to see it nonetheless that like things you find interesting actually have a big impact on your personality. So I thought that was pretty neat. But yeah. And in terms of like other music, I'm pretty sure blues is the same thing. It makes you a bit like those who listen to blues and jazz tend to be a little bit more creative. Those who listen to rock music are actually not that creative and don't have high self esteem. So I'm sorry if you listen to rock, but that's what psychology says. And obviously, of course, there's ways to prove that wrong. It usually tends to be more of like a self-reporting data. So like, oh, I listen to this type of music and I tend to see myself as this type of person. So you can probably argue the accuracy behind the data, but that's my take on personality and music taste.
That's really interesting. It just kind of goes to show like how influences in your life do to an extent shape how you kind of perceive yourself and behave on a day-to-day basis. So never really knew about that. So thank you for informing.
No problem, no problem. Anytime. But yeah.
So something that you wanted to also touch upon is how society views hip hop and rap, because I mean, just to like kind of set the tone, and I think the quote that you included was really just like good in terms of summarizing what I guess like some people feel is that Fox News analyst Geraldo Rivera said, "This is why I say that hip hop has done more damage to young African Americans than racism in recent years," which I feel just so before we like I guess that's like the quote, it kind of just shows that there's this camp of people in the United States, and I think like to an extent globally as well, that feel that the kind of topics that are touched upon in hip hop and rap, whether it be like I own so many cars or like I've got chains on my neck and like Versace on my clothes, then I feel like there's there's a perception that hip hop and rap is just like substanceless kind of music,
Mm-hmm.
and to an extent that's kind of echoed in like my household a bit as well. Obviously not to the extent of, like what some people say on like mainstream media, but there's just this I guess stigma that there's no real value in terms of like what it contributes to society. So I think it'd be good to try to tackle that as like kind of coming to a good, I guess, like a good understanding of how it really does affect society, because it does have its positive impacts and to an extent it does have its negative impacts in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. Actually, the quote that you stated was actually used as a snippet in one of Kendrick Lamar's songs, DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually won the Pulitzer Prize for Music in 2018 because he was one of the rappers that really tackled these, like, the problems in society and how negatively society views people of color and more specifically African Americans in society anyways, and like the disproportionate rates of like African American incarceration and all of that. And I feel like again going back to celebrities and you artists using their platform, I think it's to dismiss the struggles of African American communities by saying something like what Geraldo Rivera said is just to is not very professional and inhumane, like not very not very, yeah, again, not very professional and just wrong, because these are real people going through these problems, and for you to just dismiss them is not like, you know, not characteristic of a good person. So, and I do understand some lyrics may be violent, but those lyrics, especially to give another example, 21 Savage, he was in a gang. He's known to have violent lyrics, but if you look into his songs, really analyze them, he's actually lamenting those crimes too, basically saying that it's not like because I wanted to do this stuff, it's because society is structured in a way that I had to, just in order to survive or like live another day, provide for my family. And I think it's very important to know that. I know like a lot of rap songs may be that, like, oh, I have so much money, I have so many cars, look at my big house. But again, that's like the type of music that sells. And the same people listening to that music go ahead and say, oh, all rap is just this like type of music. And again, it goes back to like the popularity as well, that the fact that these songs are so popular, the ones that do tackle, racial bias and all the, problems that are evident in society, and these are only popular because society, like some people listening to them kind of understand these struggles and, like show that, oh, your message is being heard. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, no, like a song, like for every song, like, and no, and this isn't like disrespect any one rapper and to say like what they're doing is wrong, but, and well, before I said that, I think that I feel like there isn't really any harm in, or maybe I'm misphrasing it, but in terms of like the topics touched upon, like I think we just need to really recognize that that's just the culture that people are brought up in terms of like, and in a way you can kind of just say, oh, is this like satirical in a way? But maybe that's just analyzing incorrectly on my part. But I'd say that like the topics that are touched upon in a lot of rap is just like what unfortunately people of color in less economically privileged communities like have to deal with in terms of like gang violence, or like what people might glorify in terms of like what is good like societal status in terms of like having so much money or having so much bling. Um, so I think that kind of gets lost in translation because like ultimately people aren't just saying I'm gonna rap about like how much money I have. It's ultimately like though it's influence his or her decision in terms of like referring to a rapper to talk about something in their song is influenced by how they were raised up. So in the community that they were raised up in. So I feel like that kind of those kind of topics being touched upon or mentioned in songs isn't necessarily a reason to just say it's bad. It's more so just it should rather be used as something to recognize if this is like being talked about so much in songs, then maybe there's something we need to do to like address how we perceive or like how we can work together to like uplift all people of color to like an equal status as like white individuals in this country. And in regards to like, I'm not sure where I was going with this, but in terms of like addressing like societal issues in rap songs, you can argue that there are a lot of songs that aren't really doing so, but more so just talk about like how much money they have or how much bling someone has on their wrist. But for every like song that talks about that, there is undoubtedly a song that discusses like racial issues or violence issues in poor communities. Like for every Little Uzi Vert's "Sauce It Up," there's "This Is America" by Childish Gambino that, and I think that song really is like just a, I don't want to say poster child, but just an example of like how well a song can address and how well rap has addressed these issues that exist in our country, while at the same time being good music that people can listen to.
Yeah, very true. And it's almost like a bit heartbreaking because some songs that I would listen to that came out in like probably early 2000s and compare them to some songs that come out now that cover, similar things. And it's like, wow, all this time has passed and there has been almost no change because both of these songs, 10 years apart from each other or even 20 years apart from each other are still talking about the same problems that are present in society, you know? So it's like it's really up to society because they glorify hip hop and rap and they culturally appropriate, but then when it comes down to helping those cultures, they kind of like step back, you know.
Yeah, and just like to kind of delve into the quote that was mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, I think that's it's just as you mentioned, like completely incorrect in terms of an assessment because that's just it ignores virtually everything else that has happened, whether it be from like police brutality to just how people of color are perceived by individuals who are racist, or just like this stereotypes that society perpetuates based on like interactions on a day-to-day basis. But B, it also just it just like doesn't account for the fact that there is good in this genre of music. And I think to an extent, people are kind of, or those people that are in opposition to rap are kind of afraid of like how just popular it's become in such a short time. And they're just looking for holes to poke into the argument when in reality, like you can't say that like you can't you can use the same argument of like, oh, there's no substance to rap songs for like virtually a lot of pop songs that come out, whether it be like Senorita to an extent. I'm not saying I don't like the song, but like at the end of the day, how many more rap songs or how many more songs are we gonna get that like talk about a love story, you know?
Yeah, true, very true. And just like going back to the quote, blaming, hip hop for the damage to young African Americans is kind of like blaming African Americans for the problem African American, like, kind of, goes back to just blaming African Americans, which is completely incorrect. The problem is at the base of like the society and the fact that other people who are really well versed in and know what's going on just don't refuse to step up, and like blame other African Americans in turn, which is ridiculous and very disheartening. So, but yeah, again, it's just really important to, like talk to people about the problems that are going on. Even in my culture, there's a lot of colorism. Those like Pakistani kids like that are darker are seen as like not lovable or not wanted. I'm probably a bit blessed to have lighter skin, but I shouldn't feel like happy that I have lighter skin because it shouldn't really matter. But it's just how like society sees darker people as less worthy is like ridiculous. So
No, yeah, it's definitely an issue in India as well with casteism, like still being a pretty big part of culture. And I know there have been like progressive steps, but the fact that it's still, we can say it's still present in India is still a bit of an issue, or not a bit of an issue, a very big issue in terms of like working towards a society where all people in all countries are able to like exist in tandem and equally. So yeah, like it's definitely not exclusive to just the United States, but I feel like because the United States is kind of the or is where like most of Western culture comes out, and the fact that the country is like such a melting pot in terms of like the ethnicities and races that come together in this country, it's just a bit more amplified. But that's not saying that this kind of colorism isn't a problem in other countries as well. So it's definitely like, and this kind of goes back to the whole importance of education, just like being aware of these issues and understanding the full context as opposed to like trusting everything you like might hear from a headline.
very true. Yeah, education is important. And just going back, I'm so glad that like I'm part of a generation where stuff like social media is there and the internet, so just so I can educate myself more on what's going on, or else because the news doesn't cover it enough, as we touched upon before. They only cover what they want to cover, so it's up to basically us, like, and the younger generation, to actively look for information. And yeah, so
No, absolutely, and using like that platform to speak out on what you feel is right, and what ultimately is going to change the perception is our generation, because like you can see that Gen Z is starting to take, I wouldn't say control, but starting to gain gradually more influence in like how people perceive things, and Gen Z is starting to get more representation in mainstream media. I think the fact that social media has been such a big part in like making these issues more, I guess, recognized is really crucial in terms of working towards better goals in terms of like what our society should be.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Especially younger celebrities really have been using their platform. I know Sky Jackson has been calling out potential, like, pre-freshmen on some races, like racial slurs that they used. And it's important. I know people think that Sky Jackson is very annoying, but, she's kind of doing what everyone should be doing and calling these people out, holding them accountable, and, making them face, consequences because they're being wrong and really bad people. So
Yeah, like just to kind of leave a closing note on that, but I think a couple of years ago, like the infamous like Harvard group chat where like those people who got admitted were sending like these really inappropriate racist memes and comments to each other. It needs to, like, that kind of stuff needs to be held accountable. You can't just continue overlooking people regardless of like their status for comments that they make that are racist and inappropriate and demean other cultures and brush it aside like, oh, it's just one bad apple. There's
yeah,
plenty of good people in the world, when in reality, it's more than just one person. And ultimately, as if we make proper behavior the norm and stop excusing this kind of, I guess, just like blatant disregard or kind of racist behavior, then that's going to ultimately like achieve progress.
I definitely agree. Yeah, progress is important, education, everything at this point.
Read up, study. You've got time in the summer, so
Yep.
you've got time to read. I've been making sure to read a lot more as well, and I'm going to continue doing so.
Yep. Me too, for sure. But yeah.
So that is it for this episode of the Double A Podcast, episode 7. Still crazy to say, but thank you, Laiba, for taking the time to come on this episode and talk about a lot of topics. I know we covered a lot during this episode. I'm not sure how long the video might be, but definitely a really good discussion on a lot of things.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me again. I really appreciate it. It was really nice to talk about, some things that should be talked about and just like hear your views on some things that I've been, kind of thinking about the past few days. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, discussion is one of the first steps towards making progress as a society. So discussion never hurts, even if it leads to like even if it has conflicting views. If you just let those two views like simmer by themselves, they're going to develop into something much worse.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so that's it for today's episode. Hope you guys have a lovely rest of the weekend, and until then, enjoy the weekend.